Scientists are given to understatement. In their paper describing the double helix structure of DNA, published in Nature in 1953, James Watson and Francis Crick mildly declared, "This structure has novel features which are of considerable biological interest." Sir Alexander Fleming even had less to say about one of the great medical discoveries of the 20th century, penicillin. Fleming, who won the Nobel Prize in 1945 for his work, noted about the nature of research, "One sometimes finds what one is not looking for." And on November 30th, 2022, in a tweet that afternoon, @SamA wrote, "Today we launched ChatGPT. Try talking to it here." In a brief thread, Sam Altman, predicted, "Language interfaces are going to be a big deal, I think. Talk to the computer, voice or text, and get what you want for increasingly complex definitions of want." Well, going to be a big deal? Oh yeah, definitely. The large language models that are fundamental to generative AI solutions, including ChatGPT from OpenAI, rely on machine-readable content available on the web as books, scholarly journals, or other curated publications. And much of that is protected by copyright. Already, licensing programs are emerging to allow such uses of copyrighted content. In the meantime, publishers, academics, and researchers are recognizing and responding to the opportunities that AI presents to them. These communities all share concerns that machine-enabled solutions must incorporate essential human rights to equity and security, authorship, and authenticity. My name is Chris Kenneally. I'm with Copyright Clearance Center, CCC. I'm very happy to welcome you today to this discussion, and I'm very happy to share this platform with a panel of experts who are going to share their insights on these issues. I have a wonderful panel, and I want to briefly introduce them now. Immediately to my right is Carlo Labazari. Carlo, welcome.
Thank you.
He's an internationally recognized specialist in intellectual property law and policy with 20 years of experience working in Africa, Europe, and the U.S. He's the author of a short paper, a snapshot of the relationship between AI, copyright, and licensing, which is available today at this event. To Carlo's right is Dr. Namrata Singh. Dr. Namrata, welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Namrata is founder and director at Turikaz Group, a medical communications company working with pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, and diagnostic firms, as well as academic institutions to support research and publications globally. Dr. Namrata is a pediatrician and a founding member of the AI Working Group at the European Medical Writers Association. And on the far end, to my right, is Dr. Hong Zhu. Dr. Hong Zhu, welcome. Dr. Hong Zhu is Director of Intelligence Services and Head of AI R&D for John Wiley & Sons, and leads the Intelligence Services Group in Wiley Partner Solutions. Dr. Zhu holds a PhD in 3D modeling with artificial intelligence algorithms, and he's a chef and contributor to the Scholarly Kitchen blog published by the Society for Scholarly Publishing. And I think, Dr. Zhu, it's important to start with you and to learn more about the publisher's perspective here and how these tools are going to become part of your workflow. And tell us about the role that AI solutions will play in this intended evolution at Wiley from being a content provider to being a knowledge provider.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, Wiley is a shift from the content provider to knowledge provider. So we start thinking about when we talk about knowledge. So what mean knowledge? So the people, the consume or digest or absorb the knowledge, and understand, apply knowledge, and the knowledge is distributed to the people. So there's clearly three key elements: people, knowledge, and how you interact it, distributed or understand. So we apply the AI to support in these these three key elements. For example, the knowledge. When we talk about knowledge, first we need to create knowledge. How? We need we apply the AI to automatically extract this key metadata and to present the knowledge in the the user for the human-friendly human readable or machine readable. And also we extract the knowledge, the hidden knowledge, the valuable, concepts, entities, and relationship between the entities from this unstructured text content. So this is a knowledge creation. And then in order to better to serve the people, we need to understand who they are and what their interests so that we can distribute the relevant the articles and the knowledge to them, to human. So we apply the AI to understand, help our publisher or partners to better understand who their audience, what they want, what's their interests, what's their expertise. So we can, make sure we can make the more personalized, the information distribution to them. And lastly, we also want to, how can we help the researchers, user to discover this knowledge, because today is information overloading is too much to read. So we need to apply the AI to simplify it, to generate a summarization to help. And for example, our Wiley have the Wiley partner solution have the research exchange submission. So we automatically extract the metadata to make the submission work. It's much easier. And also we have the Literatum, the largest digital publishing platform for the content, for scholarly content in the world. And then we can enable and make all this knowledge is searchable and readable over the internet. So this is, and also we also validate the knowledge, because this is very important. Integrity is, as a publisher, is a key responsibility to make sure this published the knowledge in the good quality, good standard. So we also apply AI to detect its paper mills, image manipulations, etc.
Right. And it seems to me that in order to understand where publishing will be going using these AI tools, it's important to understand how people are using them. And it sounds to me like it's changing the relationship, to two relationships really, the relationship of the researcher to the content, but it's also changing the relationship of the researcher, the authors, to the publisher.
Exactly. So this is a change the whole the research experienced with this content, especially in the generative AI. So now, for example, normally we consider there's four main roles of the researchers, right? Authors, researchers, and also editor and the reviewers. This is normally the roles. And then all this AI, so actually this is not only the content, but also the AI-powered solutions to change this roles experience. For example, for author, the AI, generative AI now you can use to polish, and help them to draft the manuscript and polish the writing to increase the writing qualities, etc. Especially useful for whose native language is not English. So this is the most popular generative AI application in the world now. And for the researchers, we can apply the AI to identify the ways how to improve the manuscript, and also for the reviewers, identify the ways to improve the reviewers and the quality, and also help the reviewers to quickly see there's any support or contradicting the literature in this, and also for editor we can apply the AI to identify is any relevant reviewers. You can review this and identifies any emerging, the journal opportunities, new opportunities. For researcher, lastly, I believe, the AI will be every researcher in the future will have the personal research assistant to help them, not only the discover information, apply the information and remember this information knowledge, but also this AI, especially the AI agent, they can help them to the plan and execute and analysis the experiment. So definitely this will speed up the research outcome.
And as the content grows, content is going to grow because for a lot of reasons. There are going to be more authors who are enabled to submit to the journals, but also AI content is going to be part of the growth as well. What kind of concerns does that raise for you at Wiley around copyright issues and the copyrighted content? And I associate the copyrighted content with quality content because it's content that's been curated, peer-reviewed, and there's an element of trust that's part of it.
Yes, indeed. So So now the current situation is, the AI governance is far behind the AI, the capabilities, which is dangerous. And then it's very actually it's impact the research and also the publishing, because it's very hard, for the people to manage all this, this AI capabilities. And then, so that's why, we need, create the legal framework and to catch up these technologies, to have the response. So I do have the several concerns about this. So first concern is, everyone know, is, the copyright infringement. So today is a copy, the AI, generative AI, use, the generated the content which, the infringe on the copyright without permission. So this is a problem. This already is a lot of the suit cases, over the internet. Even worse, recently the OpenAI and Google, they released, the web crawler to allow the, to automatically grab the information over the internet to train the model, to improve that model. Although, they allow the users, the website publisher to, to disable, to block this. But I think, as the AI's capability expand, the things has become much more complicated. So this is one concern. Another concern actually is the AI can generate the content, which, it's similar to the, the original content, but it's not that enough to be considered as, the copyright infringement. This is one scenario. Another scenario is, it generates some content which infringes the copyright, but it's hard to detect. So in both cases, for the copyright holders, it's very difficult for them to enforce the right in both cases.
Well, Dr. Hongzhu with Wiley, thank you very much. And I want to turn to Dr. Namrata, because you've got an interesting perspective. You're creating content, and you're working with many of the research institutions, as well as the pharmaceutical companies and others who are going to be submitting content to journals and at Wiley and elsewhere. So as you do all of that work, what's your message for publishers about AI and content creation?
I think what has happened is, as you mentioned, when ChatGPT was launched, and that was the honeymoon phase in the initial part, where everybody was that it's going to make life easier for especially content creators. But what I have seen and what I have realized in last, say, 8 to 10 months, it has put an additional responsibility on the medical writers. It's just not, the reduction of the time which is important here. It is not only the efficiency which we have to focus on, but also the checking, all the legal aspects, the integrity part of it, the copyright, as we mentioned. So it's not a very, it's not a very a magic bullet kind of solution, but it is something which is there. We cannot ignore it. And the publishers also will have to acknowledge. So I did come across, some instances where people spoke about that if it is a AI generated content, then should it not be accepted, or, how do you differentiate? So I think that is where more focus of the publishers should be, that even if it is a AI generated content, is there a human being who was behind it and who kind of, approved it, reviewed it, checked the authenticity of that content. So the human part is going to be there. In fact, even if the efficiency becomes better, the responsibility is becoming higher here. So, so the balance is, and times to come, and with all these, developments happening and new technologies coming up, it's going to get more tougher going forward. So it's not something which is going to maybe make life very easy for the medical writers, but it's going to be, you have to wade through that ocean of tools which are out there, and how much, and then the additional responsibility on you, because I've read about all these class actions and, lawsuits, and the writers may come in the center of all this because they are the ones who created the content. And when you're doing it, when you're writing it, or when you're, working with your client, sometimes you are pushed to do things which you feel that, which you should not be doing. So we are not the ones who own the content. So that's an additional responsibility on us to educate the client, to, tell the, especially, the sponsors, the pharmaceutical companies, look, it's not so simple. Even if it's an AI tool, so you are not going to get a paper in, say, hours out of it. So there is going to be, some human interactions behind it. And similarly for the publishers also.
Yeah, well, I think that gets back to the point, Dr. Namrata, that Dr. Zhu was making about the importance of trusting content here. And the challenge with a lot of the generative AI tools is the lack of transparency.
Yes.
The lack of identifying the sources. And that must be really troubling for writers, because they do, as you say, have this real responsibility.
Yes. And a lot of guidelines and recommendations did come up over last couple of months. So we had ICMJ guideline came up, which mentioned about the responsibility of authors and an additional responsibility. So even if and the disclaimers and the transparency, if you have used an AI tool, then you mention that in your method section. You mention the name of the tool, you mention the version if it is there, or the whole technology part behind it. So this is where I guess the transparency works, but ultimately the responsibility is on the author. And as we write on behalf of the author, then, the responsibility comes back to us.
Right.
So, but guidelines and recommendations do help us just to, know that what is right and what is wrong, and what we can do and what we cannot do.
Well, I think what's coming through for me is just, the real responsibility, the sense of principle that is involved here. And I want to pull back a second and let people know about your background. You're a pediatrician.
I'm a pediatrician.
Right. So you have dealt with patients, and you work with people who are at one of the most important parts of their lives. And many of the writers that you have are women, particularly trained in medicine, who are trying to balance family and work and so forth. So this is deeply a part of what you do. It's not just the business part. Yeah. It's your professional concern.
Yeah. So it is. And another concern here is we have people working from various locations. And so the technology part and the security part and somewhere the integration with the IT and technology. So all this is, where everybody, whether it's a small company or a large company, I guess that's where everything has to converge. We cannot have it in isolation. We cannot have a tool and just, ask the team to implement and start working on it. So we do a small experiment on various tools, but that is only for an experiment sake, where we are not working on the client projects or confidential data on that. We navigate these tools. We see what are the advantages, disadvantages, how much of time it is reducing, or what is the productivity, and we have certain parameters which we evaluate on those. But that's a completely a research activity which we are doing internally, and there are very strict instructions to all the writers, and we have the whole IT kind of infrastructure also, where they're not allowed to work on client projects yet.
But, I was a journalist in my previous life, and we always said, consider the source. Yes. And it sounds to me like that's equally important in your profession. Yes. Consider the source.
Yeah, and there's one more very, very important concern which is here. So the tools which are there, they have been trained on manually generated data till now. Now, what's going to happen in next couple of years? So maybe more AI-generated content is coming, and then the training will be on those AI-generated content. And eventually, maybe, the quality of the content overall, because everything is connected. We are not working in silos here. We are connected to so many, various stakeholders. So eventually, if we don't have these rules and regulations in place, then it might have a very serious impact on the research integrity itself. And, then what papers we are getting afterwards, can we trust them? Do we, can we quote them as our references? So that might happen.
Well, Dr. Namrata, thank you for raising those important points. And I want to turn finally to Carla Lavazari. Carla, welcome again. And you have contributed to CCC what I'll call a white paper here, a brief paper on the snapshot of the relationship between artificial intelligence, copyright, and licensing. We have copies of this available for everyone here. And I guess I want to ask you a little bit, because we assume a lot here when we hear about AI, and definitions are sometimes crucial to this. What do we mean by this AI or that AI? Which technologies particularly are using copyrighted materials as the inputs for their solutions?
Well, I mean, the models that have been catapulted in everyone's consciousness, and thanks for having me today, are the large language models, the LLM, which is maybe one instance of a so-called foundation model, which is a broad general application AI tool. And typically those are trained on, be it structured or unstructured inputs of enormous proportions, some really fantastical numbers, and are trained to be of general application. They are then sometimes enhanced by what I would call specific libraries to make them more suited to perhaps medical writing or fire regulation of buildings in architecture or whatever. So then you sort of specialize the general foundation model into the area you're interested in.
All right. So what are the rights of copyright holders in relation to all of those inputs and then to the outputs as well?
Yeah, so copyright, I mean, there are two questions, the input side and the output side predominantly. On the output side, I think it resolves along the line of similarity. Are the works similar, or is there a new right that maybe creative people need to protect their style? But there's also freedom of expression that should put a limit to what you can protect. I mean, if you want to emulate a famous writing genre, it would be a pity if this was somehow inhibited by overprotecting this kind of similarity of writing style. On the input side, definitely, in order to make any valuable artificial intelligence tool, you will need entire reproductions of works that are scraped from the open internet, or they are procured through special purchases, I guess, licensing of materials to use. I think in the previous panel we heard that open access titles are frequently used, that Frontiers is doing that with Google. So those are the source materials. They will still need to be processed, normalized in some fashion, because in order for the machines to work well, they do need either at the input side structured data, or then they need a calibration phase where whatever they learn from unstructured data is tested against labeled data.
Okay.
Don't know if that answers.
Very helpful. And, at Frankfurt Book Fair, it's a global event, but it's important to remind the audience that copyright is a national issue. Can you briefly tell us about some of the responses in various jurisdictions to these questions that have been raised? And they're very new questions, so not everything is fully cooked at this point, but tell us where we're at.
Absolutely. So it's quite spotty. That's the very short answer. So you have copyright law being territorial, so it applies in whatever country legislates, and there have been a few countries that have made specific rules or are in the process of doing so. In the EU, there are extensive rules on so-called text and data mining, and text and data mining for non-commercial and commercial purposes. Text and data mining isn't identical to AI, but there is a significant overlap, so that many people engaged in AI will at least deploy text and data mining as well. And so there are exceptions and opt-out mechanisms that allow you in some circumstances to use text as input in the non-commercial sphere especially, even though software, for instance, isn't included there, only like literary works, let's say, articles, books. On the commercial side, there is an opt-out possibility for materials available on the open internet in the EU, So that's a very specific rule. In the meantime, the EU is busy legislating a so-called AI Act, and is addressing what was said earlier, the transparency requirement, especially for foundation and generative AI models. So the AI Act that is expected to go through, but who knows, in December, would ultimately include an obligation to disclose what copyright-protected works have been used to train these generative models. And I do think it is an important marker to force greater transparency into these models. China has gone, if I may add this, also has gone out of its way to create 15 principles, I think around the 15th of September. 18th of September, this has come into law, okay, another 3 days. And those they are principles, but they are pretty mandatory. And as part of the principle is, in fact, transparency as to labeling of data, and also what data has, and a respect for intellectual property rights.
Right. I've heard people compare the AI Act that's in the European Parliament right now to a kind of a GDPR for AI, that if it were to come into effect in the EU, it would have an influence globally.
That is predicted in the sense that any significant AI giant or business or in publishing, people really publish for the world, or these AI entities are developed for the world. So to ignore a segment of 400 or 500 million people in Europe is going to be hard. Similarly, 1.3 billion people in China, it's going to be hard to ignore and say, we're just not going to deploy our tools in those jurisdictions. I don't think many companies would consider that an option.
And as we've heard from Dr. Zhu and Dr. Namrata, there's going to be a great demand not only to use the tools, but to have materials to keep feeding the tools. And so that is a real challenge. What kinds of licensing would meet that demand? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I think, as it was said earlier, there's an IBM sort of short video that says AI is big on productivity and on performance, but it's low on trust and transparency. So these licenses can either be from segments of publishing, perhaps, that have large content that they can license, or it could be a collective license where a agency such as CCC is used to deal into situations of linking many to many situations. So you have many writers, many publishers on the one side, you have many pieces of content on the other side used by different AI tools. So that is one mechanism, is collective licensing. I think it was said in a US submission to the Copyright Office, the key of copyright is credit, attribution, consent, and compensation. And these type of licenses are well suited to handle consent, credit, and compensation.
Yeah, there's one more point I'd like to ask you about, and maybe the others can help us with this too. We talk about content all the time. I'm a writer, so I think content means words. But in scholarly publishing, content means images. It means data. It means all of these things. Is that what we're talking about? All of that comes under the umbrella of copyright, of course.
Well, I mean, a large segment thereof is in copyright material. So many images, photos, illustrations in scientific articles are subject to copyright. There will also always be data that's not raw data that is not subject. In fact, the EU again has legislated in a Data Governance Act and has specifically excluded sensory data from any protection. So when your fridge says to the supermarket in future you're out of milk, that type of data is not going to be suddenly engulfed in this discussion about how to relate in copyright content to the AI endeavor.
Well, I'm sorry.
Maybe I can just add one more point.
Please.
Build on this. So I think the AI should now move from the more analytic AI to the generative AI, from the single modality to the multimodality. So AI and also the this rich the research outcome like images, videos, and the text is is correlated, positive correlated, because the AI can be used to generate this rich the research output, images, AI can be used to generate videos, generate text, and even the virtual reality in the future. But on the other hand, this rich, the research outcome can be used as feedback to the AI to build even better model. So this is kind of the loop.
I'll leave with some advice. It's always important to use your own judgment and common sense and to verify information from multiple sources before making any important decisions or taking any actions. It's great advice, and you can take it. It came from ChatGPT, all right? I want to thank our panel, Attorney Carlos Scola-Lavazari, Dr. Namrata Singh, Founder Director at Turicos Group, and Dr. Hong Zhu, Director of Intelligence Services and Head of AI R&D for Wiley. Thank you all very much indeed. My name is Chris Kenneally. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.